Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Loaded Balls, and it's the lockdown series. Interview continues. Obviously Down got promoted there, so we were going to have a big parade about the games and what's happening, but unfortunately there's no games. But Down are promoted into Division 2, so well done, men. But I am absolutely delighted to have the Bielsa of Gaelic football with me, Colm Nally. Colm, very excited to have you on. I've read your 2 books now, and thanks very much for the present, by the way. It was great reading. How is things, and how, you're with me now at the minute, using stage level 5, is it? Lockdown as well. So
Right, yeah.
how is finding it?
Thanks a million for having me on, John. I'm delighted to get the opportunity to have a chat with you. Yeah, look, things are good. We're back training. We're back training officially since the 14th of September. It's a bit eerie, to be honest with you. We've had a few incidences where people have been in close contact and had to step down. We have a tremendous backroom team, but one night we were training there, I think it was two Thursday nights ago, and the doctor addressed us and explained why certain people weren't at training for tonight. And there was just an awful edge to it, really. None of us experienced it. We were short, we were ratty with each other. There was just this sort of, nobody knew what was happening. You know, there was a lot of stuff up in the air and a lot of questions unanswered. So you have to face with that all the time. That's certainly new. And when the latest restrictions were brought in, and we got to go ahead to GA Elite adult football, got to go ahead to senior championship, that was sort of a relief to everybody. You kind of had a pathway then, and it was like, look, let's just get on with it now. But I that night really kind of taught us all a lesson that how vulnerable the whole thing could be. You could be ruled out tomorrow for whatever reasons and things like that. So we just decided, look, we'll take it one night at a time and we'll enjoy it. But we definitely learned a lesson that day, that it's, we're probably lucky to have it, and we're still kind of a little bit tiptoeing around it. Some guys are they're getting their head around it now, but beforehand they were we didn't know what was happening, where we were going.
And over the lockdown, then the first lockdown, Colm, I read that you done personalised programs for fellas as well. How important was that to keep the, I suppose, morale and fitness levels up as well?
Well, see, a bit of background to that, John, right? So, like, I mean, I said, my day job is I work for the Department of Foreign Affairs, and when the lockdowns were coming in, there was a sense that this wasn't going to last forever. Right now, every person you met in the street had a different opinion on it, but I sort of felt, and with the management crew and me, we all kind of felt that, yeah, we were going to have some sort of season. So we thought it was important to keep some sort of touch with them. So with the strength and conditioning coaches and things like that, and what we did is we asked the players to send us some videos of the space that they have to work with. So we got videos of back gardens, roadways in front of the houses, fields at the back, stuff like that. So we sort of designed individual programs for them. Like, for instance, we would do some sort of ball juggling, some skill set work, and they had body weight exercises and all that to do. So we kept in touch with them. We had some great experiences. Some lads had brothers and sisters locked up with them, so they had training partners. Others had nobody. They just had walls and trees and things like that. So we had a great time with that. But we would kind of get together every 10 days via Zoom or whatever, and we'd share stories and experiences and that, and we'd review certain matches and things like that. And again, it wasn't pushed on anybody, it was optional, because we didn't want to be kind of going down to forcing anyone to do anything. But what we felt was players loved to reach out, and they loved that engagement. It became kind of new, like a highlight of their week was logging on, and it was very light. It was very, off the cuff. There was no structure to it really, but we felt like it was a good level of engagement, and we remained tangible. Like we were touching each other and feeling like how the vibe was. Like we were kind of taking the temperature of the group, for want of a better description. And I think that helped, because like now, since we got back together, you know, we sometimes tell stories about the long hair fellas had and this, that, and the beards and stuff like that, you know. So it just added to a bit of crack, but I think it was important.
No, yes, definitely. And you know, how did you find Division One Colm this year? The standard of football. I know you playing Dublin last week, and you're going to give a good account of yourselves. But overall, how do you find Division One football now in the All Ireland series?
Look, it was brilliant, right? It was really, really a great experience for us all. And believe it or not, right, I'm not trying to be a holistic or sort of woolly about the whole thing, but like we really targeted performances, right? We knew the results were going to be, you know, hard to come by. Yet we wanted them as much as possible, but we always said, listen, if we can get a level of performance against these teams and we can kind of get the graph going upwards, you know, we can see this progression, right? So, you know, we went into it, and our biggest defeat was by Donegal, but after that, Dublin beat us with 4 points, and Galway won, Mayo 2, you know, so we were competing with them for a lot, and we learned so much from it. But even as a management group, we learned watching how the sort of top teams operate. Now, we were very lucky to get 3 Super 8 matches last year as well, so you could really kind of see them at championship pace in August, which is very, very hard to come by. So, you know, we were just kind of immersing ourselves in that learning and trying to get as much as we can out of it. And again, look, Meath are a big county, they're a proud football county, and they want to be up there with the big boys, but they know that it's going to take time. So, you know, like that's pocketed now, that experience. So we have to kind of push on from that. But it was fantastic to see, you know, how they operate, and we got an awful lot from it.
First class. And I suppose you know, you coming as a coach then in the Meath, how does a Dublin man then be received by the Meath faithful then?
Well, even to make matters worse, I actually I live in Louth and I played for Louth. So coming from Dublin, when I went into the Meath camp first, there's a good joke around that I'd asked them where would they prefer. I prefer them Louth or Dublin, you know, and they said neither, to be honest with you. But look, I think like it was very big of like, you know, the group comes first, right? And Andy's a really good progressive manager, and he just thought he wanted to progress the thing a little bit, fresh voice and stuff like that. And I was honored to be asked, because as a coach, like, I mean, like I've coached Louth and I've been involved in various club teams and my own club. I've been coaching in my own club, Newtown Blues, now for over 20 years, and I'll always do that. I was under sevens coach, goalkeeper coach to seniors, coach to senior, and you know, that's what you do with your clubs. But for you to learn as a coach, there's not a lot of opportunities out there unless you move around. So for me to get that opportunity to go in and work with Andy McEntee, and like all his background team are all Ireland winners: Fionnán Mortar, Jerry Cooney, Donald Curtis, right, Niall Ronan, ex-Irish international, you know, rugby player. Like, so it's great for me to get to work with these guys. So I jumped at it, you know, with the opportunity of learning off these guys. And plus, the players there put different demands on you, you know, because they've higher expectations. You know, they've quite high expectations of themselves. So they put demands on you. You know, they put demands on themselves first, but they put demands on you to, you know, keep the training cutting edge, modern tactics, all that sort of stuff. So it was a great opportunity for me, and I've loved every minute of it so far.
Brilliant, Colm. And I suppose, you know, whenever a coach then, I've also like always thought, you know, you have different players for different positions. Do you think that coaching then there's different attributes that a coach, you know, say an attacking coach, or is it more, you know, first team coach and that's it?
Well, it's a good question, John, right? And I've often thought of this a lot, right? And I think specifically, like for GA, right? So we would look a lot at things like rugby, soccer, Aussie rules, things like that, right? And we look at a lot of them things now, but we're very unique to ourselves because, like, we are an amateur organisation. I say, now there's a lot of professional experience coming in S&C and things like that. But I think there's sort of two styles of coaches in the GA, and that's one that improves you individually as a footballer, and that's one that improves you as a team. And I think they're two very different things. So I think that sort of coaches within clubs, right, younger, coaching younger teams, they're really, you know, responsible for coaching the player and improving their skills individually and whatever. But then as you get into county football and even club senior football, or, you know, top club football, an awful lot of it's about systems. An awful lot is about systems of play and styles of plays and things like that. But if them players don't have the sort of basic skills, it doesn't matter what system you bring into the game, you know. So I do think that some coaches might be sort of, you know, they might have their strengths might lie on developing the player, and then there's definitely coaches that their strengths lie in developing team and team tactics and things like that, you know. So it's very hard to marry them all, you know. But you know, look, I mean, you know, like I've experienced them all, and that's one of the advice that I'd always give to other coaches, and that is coach at every level. Coach at no matter, never turn down an opportunity to coach, be it another sevens team, another tens team, a girls team, anything, even football for mothers, you know, all that that's popping in. I coach anything, because you always learn out of that, you know. You always get something from it, and you find what your strengths are then.
And you know, how did you then start off? Did you always think that you know, the skills based coaching was for you, or did you always find that you enjoyed the tactics more and setting up teams, you know, to play a certain way?
Well, what I did do, right, is I could never understand why you would do any sort of training without the football, right? Like when I started off, when I played in O'Dwyer's in Balbriggan. That was my home club. I left them when I got married and moved to Drogheda, and I was always goalkeeper. But I could never figure out why we spent time running around the field and doing laps, right? Touching left hand and touching right hand, jump. I could never understand this, right? I know the need for it, but I could never understand why we couldn't do that stuff with football. So from a very early stage, right, I used to take notes of the training sessions, and I used to badger the coaches, can I do the warm up of the team? And I'd always be wanting to do the warm up. Even when I was only young, 19 or 20, I'd want to warm the team up, and I'd always be trying to, you know, integrate the ball into it, you know. And I'd always got that interest from a young age. So I think really, like, I've progressed. Like, I'd be a completely different coach now than I was when I started out, and I wanted the fanciest drills and games, right? But there was no real substance to it. Like, I was only doing it really for show. I wasn't really doing it for I'd to get something out of it, you know. Where now, I'd be the opposite now. I'd be looking at passages of plays and games. It could be any game that I'd see on the TV and things like that, and say, right, is there a tactic behind that? Try to break down what they're doing, and then try and come up with a game or an exercises, you know, to coach it, or to coach it's to stop it not happening against you. Do you know what I mean? Like, one of the things we do now, you'd be watching what sort of tactics, like say Monaghan might play, and say, right, we try to create that in training, right, lads, this is what you may face on Sunday, you know. And they don't always get that right, but what it does is, right, it gets players thinking, you know, and they're ready to expect something, you know. And what we're trying to do really is we're trying to get them self-solve, that they solve the problems on the spot. But if we throw different things at them in training, you know, you're preparing them for what teams throw at them in a match. You know, now you mightn't have exactly what they're going to throw at them, but you're hopefully arming them with problem solving abilities, you know.
Hopefully Conor Lavery doesn't watch this episode, Colin, then before next week.
Conor will be one of the best out there, so I'm sure he has a few tricks up his sleeve.
The coaching and Colin, then with underage and, you know, going to seniors and then intercounty, you know, how difficult was it to make the transition for yourself?
Well, as I said, yeah, like, I mean, like, I got opportunities years and years ago to go into county, and I didn't go in because I never felt I was ready for them. Because like one of my early forays into coaching was with Louth under 21s when I was still playing, and sort of that kind of gave me a little bit of a taster. But then I realized I wasn't ready to coach at that level, at intercounty level. So I needed to go and sort of do more hours, if you understand, with different groups and that, you know. So I'd always, as I said, be with my own club. Like, I mean, I've been coaching them. I'm still involved with the coaching as the seniors now at the minute. But it was really when my friend Colin Kelly got into Louth, and Colin asked me to go in with him. First I went in as goalkeeping coach, and then I went in with him after Paddy Crozier, who was helping him step down. And we got 2 promotions with Louth, and we did really well. We had a great time with them, you know. But at that stage, I was in between managing teams and coaching teams, and then I realized that I prefer the coaching than the management. See, when you're a manager, it doesn't matter if you're a manager of any club or a county, you have to manage up and down. right? And I kind of figured up that I don't really like that. I don't really like myself and Colin would be going out to train and Colin would get a tap on the shoulder and he'd have to go in and talk to the board, and I wouldn't see him then for the rest of the match or for the rest of the session. And I didn't like that end, but I just love being out on the pitch. I don't like talking to committees and stuff like that. I'm not interested. I'm only interested in the players and that. So I learned then that, look, but I feel too that, right, it's even at club level now, right, one man can't do everything. You know, it's players have different expectations now, and they have different sort of demands on you, right? They want they want the arm around them. They want you to know them as a person, but plus they also want football tips and football, you know, people to give them ideas on how they can get better footballers and stuff like that. So that's a lot of work. So I mean, I'm quite happy now to just kind of be the the consigliere, the second. You know, that suits me. You know, coaching from the shadows.
But I've seen an article as well that you wrote that, you know, you're there to as you said, to help them with their football, and you know, if they're having problems shooting or anything, then they can come to you. Whereas you're not, you know, you're not really, maybe not interested, but it's the wrong word, but like their problems or anything they got there, like it's just football with you, and that's it. You know, how do you build the trust then, like, you know, with the team?
Well, look, you know yourself, you have all them buzzwords. Like, I mean, if you affect the person, you affect the performance, right? And, you know, the way you as a coach treat players, right, is what they respond in a match. So I think there's room, like, I do believe, like people say that you shouldn't get close to teams and that you shouldn't be friends with teams. I don't believe that. I believe, like, I've made lots of friends in all the clubs and the counties I've coached with, and I do still in touch with them, because I think if you are genuinely interested in their game, you're genuinely interested in them, and they see that, like, this is a part of their life. Like, okay, so they're entrusting you. They're saying things to you, like things like, you know, I can't kick my left foot, or I can't hand pass my left hand. So they're kind of sort of, you know, they're opening up to you. So they're telling you what's important to them. So there is a trust there. So again, by you sort of trying to come up with some bespoke exercises or activities to improve them, right, is really helpful to them, and that's how you build trust with them. And then what you find is they open up with a lot more. Then, you know, like, you know, there's fellas coming to you, right? I sometimes one or two lads will come to you and you'll be saying, I hope he's not coming to ask me about his game, because I think he's brilliant, right? You know, and you know, and he might come to you and say, oh, I'm not comfortable catching this high ball, you know, and you're saying, geez, well, I think you're very good, like, and how can I help him here, you know? But so look, that's a good sign too, you know. So I mean, like, there's kind of, that's established, right? And fellas know then. Like, I still, even like, I have players from, believe it or not, like from, like, I've nothing to do with Loud, let's say, or even a few clubs in Dublin, and I still have players contacting me and ask me, any chance can meet up for a one-on-one session, or would you have any ideas on how I can get this and that, you know? And I love that, and I'd only be too willing to help if I could, you know. But sometimes it's just really they're reaching out for sort of, look, we all have our belly rubbed, you know, and they're just reaching out for you to rub their belly, you know. So, you know, it's trying to gauge that, but it's nice that they still think they can call on you for advice, you know.
Definitely. Where do you think the coaching is then, GA coaching as a whole, Colm? You know, where do you think is it still in its infancy? You know, or has it? You know, is it still like Tony Buckley, yourself, Kieran Dealey? You know, the same names that are coming through. You know, how do we get then more better coaches coming through then as well?
Well, I do think that we're on the verge, or on the tip of something big, because I think there's some great coaches out there. Like, I was actually talking to Donny today, and what I find really, like, is, I'm not saying that I've been pioneering it, but like, I have a background in coach education, but I'm a big believer in sharing information, because I think if you share information, what happens is, right, is people open up to you and they share stuff back with you, and then before you know it, you're talking to like-minded people about coaching and about ideas, and that's where you get a lot of ideas. Now, I would mostly share what I did, not what I do, if you get me. So, because you're constantly learning, and by sharing, right, that encourages you to go and keep sourcing new stuff. Now, basically what you're sourcing is, you're like, there's only so many skills in the game, there's only so many tactics in the game. You're just sourcing new ways of doing it, and new ways of you know, doing repetition, really. But what I feel is there's a lot of good coaches out there now. I think the level of coaching has gone through the roof. You look at your own county there with Paddy Tally now. we played them recently, and Paddy has a good crew of coaches around them. You can definitely see the football they're trying to play. You only have to look at what's happening in Donegal with two good coaches there, and Stephen Rochford, right, and Declan Bonner, and then you've Carl Lacey there. So you've got really, what's happening is you've got a lot of minds now involved, and that's new, right? Before it was only one or two people that's saying it. Now, like, people are taking on board. But you've a lot of young coaches coming too that probably wouldn't have a high profile in the game, which is fine, because what these guys do is these do more research, and these put more hours in actually learning about the game. I done a podcast recently with I was involved with Sarah Sharbuffin from the Wexford Hurlers, and Stephen Rice from Irish Soccer, and what the whole feeling was that, like, there was no real tactical coaching being done in Gaelic football. So it was lovely to be part of that, to hear the tactics that's going on in hurling, and then be able to share a few that's going on in football. So that's a definite sort of change now, where people are coaching more and more tactics, and they're doing that in various ways, like through walkthroughs, through sort of game sense scenarios. Like, for instance, we spend a lot of time working on restarts, like tactical restarts. So you're talking about sideline balls, like where I personally robbed from Thomas Groniak, the Liverpool throw-in coach, where he works on fast, long and clever throw-ins. So I mean, if you put that into sideline balls, right, and if you can work on you taking a sideline ball, and you should have three options: a long one, a fast one, or a clever one, right? You know, it gets players thinking differently, right? And it gets players thinking how to deliver a ball, how to run for a ball, how to make off, and you could have up to 4 or 5 restarts like that in a match. You know, that could lead to either you not conceding a point, or getting out of jail, or getting a score. Then your free kicks around the end when the ball is stopped, like, they're all restarts. Like, so that's tactical work now. That's thinking differently. Like, I mean, there's not many coaches, or years ago, that were coaching them. Now you see a lot of teams are working on stuff like that.
No, I was talking to the manager that's over my team as well, and we were saying, if you can get 5 guaranteed 5 scores from 5, like as you said, sideline balls, that's 5 points already, and it takes 6 to beat it. So, like, it makes sense then to have that into your game plan as well. And when with GA then, Colm, like, how do you find that the tactics is evolving? As you said, they're Liverpool are up at another level. Like, they're doing the throw-in coaching out there as well. Gaelic football now, what level is it at?
Yeah, very, very well up there, right? And every team, like, this year is going to be a little bit interesting, right? Because right, you haven't a lot of time to embed a lot of new tactics, so you're going to see a lot of tactics that probably were used over the latter few years. But I put it to you this way: like, we'd have this conversation regular enough about sweepers. When's the last time you've seen a ball kicked into a sweeper? Right, like teams are fairly aware now of what teams are playing sweepers, and they will not kick a ball into them. Well, very seldom they do, you can see that that's tactically, like, normally, right, what you'd have is you'd have teams coaching where a sweeper should go, but now you have teams coaching that be aware that these guys play a sweeper, so they'd be working on scenarios where they don't kick a ball into them, where they would approach that differently, where they'd run it, stuff like that. So tactics is very much to the fore now in Gaelic football. If you looked at Jamie Brennan's point for Donegal against Tyrone on Sunday last, there you could see it broke from there. I don't know if the goalkeeper broke it or whatever, but it was certainly deep into Donegal defence when they broke. And Ryan McHugh ran 3/4 of the pitch at full pace without touching the ball. Right, and that run took 3 players out of it to free up space for Jamie Brennan on the end. That's a tactic. Right, and that's a tactic to have that blind run. And when you see a fella like him running at you, it's going to spook defence, and 2 or 3 fellas, would step out of line to create space for others. So I mean, that level of coaching is really, really good. So that's very, very much to the fore in that.
With just as an aspect, just as you said there about the coaching and tactics and that, walkthroughs, it's a bugbear of many players. Walkthroughs, is that because they're not used to it, and say that you're only using the starting 15, how do you engage then the others?
Yeah, well, that's difficult to do, right? So, for instance, most teams would have kick-out strategies as such. So it's very, very important that everybody knows the kick-out strategies, right? And it'd be a sort of pet hate of mine as well when you have, say, you have 8v8 or 10v10 for kickouts, walking up to a half forward line, and you'd stand out a few fellas. They start chatting and they don't pay attention, you know. So again, years ago, I read about Joe Smith and him walking around a hotel room, and he'd meet at a hotel he'd stay in, and he could meet the third or fourth reserve and say, what happens when we do this and what happens when we do that, and constantly question them. So I kind of try to do a little bit of that myself with the guys, right? But in terms of we talked earlier on about talking about periodization and stuff, like tactical periodization is massive in all sports now, and it's ideal for Gaelic football. But if you take what we're facing here at the moment, is like we had a match last week, we've a match this week, so we have a 7 or 8 day turnaround, and if you break that down to hours, they need X amount of hours to recover before you can go in full tilt. So the most we'll get in this week is one good hard session, and in that you want to get a little bit of competitiveness into it. You want to get a little bit of prep work, you want to get a little bit of revision work. So that leaves you another night or two, but right now we're only got one night under the restrictions. So that's when you build in them walkthroughs, because you're only going to, your RPE for that session is only going to be around 5 or 6. So that'll allow you, so a simple message go out, believe it or not, saying to the fellas, wear your skins, wear your tracks and bottoms, okay, your rain jackets, because there will be a little bit of standing around here. So we would arm the boys with that, and we would kind of we would let them know in advance. You would send them a diagram, or you would send them information of the various kicks and setups that we're working on tonight, so they're well aware. So it's in their mind when they go down that there's going to be an element of this, and that's what you do in between games. So I mean, if you plan your season out, you can only, like what we'd always do is we'd always go from the first championship match back, because the rest you're kind of, it's knockout football then, you're really, if you get me. So you'll know what sessions you have, you'll know what matches you have, so you'll know when you can plan in them sort of RPE sessions of 5 or 6 where you'll do walkthroughs and things like that. Plus, you have to constantly send them videos, John, and you have to be sending them the messages of the strategies and the plans, that they're always there.
Yeah. And I suppose we can't just as right RPE there. In the book, I couldn't believe the size of it. I thought I was getting a wee handbook, but this year it came in the folks first class. The coaching games-based training sessions for Gaelic football, and it's RPE as well in it. Could you just give us some details about the book? It's absolutely fascinating, and I can't stress enough, anybody who's interested in coaching is going to be a coach, or who is a coach, should get the book, because that's your sessions done for a lifetime. RPE then, and it's just something that's new for many.
See, again, the RPE is a perceived effort, really, right? It's the perceived effort of, it's feedback from players, right? So basically, what we'd be doing over years is, like most training sessions that I would do, particularly my end of it, might have 4 activities in them. So on a kind of a full night session, you'd be doing 4 different activities. So I'd get the players to rate them, okay, in terms of effort, how hard did they, from 1 to 10, 1 being the easiest, 10 being the hardest. So what we do is we get a general summary, and I've done that over time. So all them activities now have been rated by sort of club players and adult inter-county players. And basically what they're telling is they found that exercise 7 out of 10. So how that comes into play then is I can talk to the S&C coach, and which is very, very important now, the medical team. When the medical team are putting players back into training after sort of a layout, they would say to me, Colm, sit him out of anything that's an RP above 7. So for instance, you're coming back after a hamstring, right? And the physios has a look at the session. They'll say, right, sit John out of the third activity there, because it might be a bit hard on him coming back, So that's why that's very valuable. Plus, like as I said to you, we're playing this weekend. So Niall would say to me, Colm, don't have the session any more than 6. On Friday night or Thursday night, and that's perfect, and that's all he needs to say, and that's us communicating and working together to make sure that the players are at the best. Now the players too, like after a while, like again, they would be familiar with a lot of these activities, so they know now what's coming So when they see the training session in advance, they be saying, right, we know like this one's going to be what he's expecting here and what we're expecting there. So it's just a good way of measuring it really. And something, it's not as difficult as people think, because you only need it like 4 activities. Them sending you a WhatsApp saying activity 1, 6, blah blah blah, and that, and then it's very easy to collate that information.
The book, Colm, what was the inspiration for it, and who are you aiming it for exactly?
Well, see, that's the second one. I done one about 2 years ago, right? It was just games-based activities for Gaelic football. And I tell you, it came from really when I was, I did do some tutoring for Louth and Dublin and Leinster and stuff like that. And I do sort of workshops because I enjoyed the interaction of the workshops, and I enjoyed, and because I learned from them as well. But what happens is, people are always saying to me, that's a great idea. Where would I get them? So I'd always record everything, and as a bit of a hobby, I'd be I started tweeting a few of them out. Now again, my age group, I'm not really social media savvy, but so I was a bit nervous doing that sort of stuff, to get myself out of the comfort zone. But I got great feedback from it, and people were saying that's a good idea, and would you try it this way, and would you try that? And people started sending me games. So I just put them all together, and I put the first book out, and the first book sold 3,000 copies. Now it's totally self-published, and I'm using a local printer and a local graphic designer, and it was just like the first one sold for €10. Like, you're not making any money in it, you're just covering costs. So then I decided, I said, you know what, it'd be nice to put some of these together in training sessions and see how one links into the other. Like, there's 1 or 2 of them sessions where the end goal comes after 3 different activities. So you're kind of like, every training session, depending on what type of coach you are, but I believe certain training sessions have to have sort of a learning phase. So your learning phase will be sort of your unimposed or semi-opposed pressure on your activities, and you're building that up to get the learning points that they progress and they put them into a game. So a lot of the sessions are built like that, where they build from one to the other to the other. So the idea just came to put them in a training session sort of format. So they're totally new activities than what was in the last one. But it's aimed for mostly, I would say, in fairness, it's aimed for about, I say, anyone that's coaching from about 13s onwards. So the youth and adult strand, it's definitely. Now, I've got some great feedback in terms of, like, a lot of clubs like Ballyboden, Ratoath, a lot of big clubs there have bought the books for all their coaches, which is a brilliant endorsement to get. And I think to myself, like you think about this, always amazed me, right? If somebody asked you to do a session in a club, to throw you €50 or something, where you'd value a book much better if some of them gave you a book or something like that and say, here you go, we value your time and effort, this might assist you in helping you. So I mean, things like that's the idea behind it, trying to get it out there, because there is resources, but they're not really ready. I think we're a bit slow in the coach education front in the GA. I think we should be producing more stuff. Like even like I put together a YouTube channel, right, and it's gone very well. Now again, you get nothing from it. It's a hobby, but and it's individual training from teams. Some clips of me train, but you're not giving that away. It's only kind of straight line exercises and things like that. But people like to see stuff. People are all visual learners. A lot of people are visual learners, and we take on information differently. So it's just trying to put more stuff out there. Do you know what? It's a hobby really for me. It's that's all. It's not, you're not telling anybody this is how you do it, this is why you do it. You're just saying, look, here's a few ideas. And what I really hope is fellas just say, look, I like what you're doing there, but I would do it this way.
I think it's brilliant. Yeah, because whenever people are asking me to design a session or anything for them, they got there, and it's usually underage coaches that are the parents of a player that don't really know that, maybe they've played, 15, 20 years ago. And it's, expectations even of underage footballers now is immense. And it's putting coaches under pressure, I think, as well.
Well, look, the best thing I would do there, if it likes it down, is I just let them play. Because like the best feedback you can get from, say, I always say this in the coaching course, if you get down, right, and if you say to the players, here's a ball, right, I'll be out just in 5 minutes, and you stand at the door with another coach and you just say, let's see what they'll do. They'll play a game. Now, they might play a game of soccer. They might put two jumpers down as goalposts and play a game of soccer. But the feedback to you is they want to come down there and play some sort of games. So if you can organize as much games as possible. Now, what I always try to do is through games, like, I mean, it doesn't have to be structured, but you can play any sort of games. But if you have kind of tight games, there's going to be a lot of hand passing, and you want to work on foot passing too. So you have to kind of make sure, watch what's happening. Is the tackling correctly? Are they getting a chance to kick the ball? You know, all that sort of stuff. So you can, you know, use the step principle to adjust your games to suit all the skills, you know. But as I said to you, I really believe that there needs to be learning phases in training. Like, you know, if you're working on putting in a crossfield ball, you have to do it some way, sort of unopposed or semi-opposed, before you can get it right with a fella hanging out of you, you know. So, you know, that's why I do it. That's the way I try to coach. Like, I with any new skills, I try to do it unopposed, semi-opposed, and fully opposed, and then put different constraints on it, like time and extra bodies and things like that into it, you know.
You've mentioned activities there a number of times, Colm. Is drills now gone out of the coaching? Do they not say coaching
Yeah,
or drills no
we
more?
we have a standard joke in the meet. Nobody's allowed. Anyone that mentions the word drills gets corrected. Like, we'd always say, like, drills are for builders and dentists, you know. And like, drills just seem to me, when we talk about drills, you just see big lines, lots of lines. Now, come here, there's nothing wrong with that at times, right? Like, for instance, like, I mean, I remember we were down training in Photo Island for a long weekend, and we had a couple of killer sessions, and on our last session, we wanted a low RPE. So what we were doing is we were having the fun shooting exercises where the lads were waiting for ages. So if anyone looked at that on its own, they'd say, well, there's your man talking about no lines, and he has a big line there. So there is times when there is lines there, but I think generally, like, you know, you have to try to get away from that sort of regimented type of stuff. Like, there's lots of coaches out there that say to me they don't use cones or they don't use whistles and things like that. And I said, that's fine. It's whatever you work for yourself. I'd find it very hard to control a group of kids not without cones and whistles and that. But, you know, they're not they're only guidelines, and, you know, like, you know, for starting points and things like that, you know, that sort of stuff. Trying to recreate snippets of matches, you know. And, you know, like, for instance, if you're trying to work on sort of slowing a counterattack, you know, you want the counterattack to start in a certain area, you know. So what's wrong putting a cone there and saying you're starting from there, you know? That's just my take, you
know. Just as you say, lines there, Jim McGuinness came in for a bit of criticism recently for his being video taking the Galway session, straight line running. Now, obviously, it didn't do them too well against Mayo, but, you know, there were unfair criticism. Do you think, taking a 30-second?
Oh yeah. Oh, totally unfair. Like, I tell you now, again, I could be completely wrong here, but here's my synopsis of that, right? They were wearing white jerseys and maroon jerseys. That was an in-house game he was down for, in my opinion. And so he was warming. He was part of warming them up. And I know what he was trying to do there. He was trying to ramp up intensity and talk about. I call it the Neil Diamond drill, right? It's all about hands, touching hands. Okay, right, and that's what that was, right? He was just kind of reinforcing the importance of your first touch and getting up intensity and things like that. But that was to my mind, that was an in-house match, right? So, like, I think fellas are just reading. Like, look, this is the thing, to John, right? Again, a good friend of mine there, Val Andrews, a great coach from Dublin, said to me one day, Colm, you're very brave, he said, putting that stuff out. And I said, Val, I'm not brave. I said, firemen are brave, right? And things like that. No, he was saying, because you're going to be ridiculed, and I do get a lot of ridicule. People say, who do you think you are, and stuff like that, right? So again, the last thing I'm going to do is say anything like that about Jimmy McGuinness. But that was my take on it. It was an in-house match, right? They were warming up. He wanted to make a message that your first touch is vital, which it is. Like, you know, I've done things like that myself several times, and, you know, that's what I reckon. And look, come here, you know, we'd all love to hear. I'd love to sit down with Jimmy McGuinness, and I'd love to have a chat with him, because, you know, players want, like that's a bold move from Park Joyce, bringing him in there, right? Because, you know, it's good to be vulnerable, right? And you're kind of putting yourself out there saying, you know, lads, listen, I don't know it all, right? So I'm trying to get as much knowledge as I can. And if that man can even impart one piece of knowledge that's going to make you better, isn't that what we want? You know, like, you got to get away from the ego, John. It's about the team. It's not about the player. It's not about the management. Like, whatever we can do to make the team better, you know. And come here, like, that was a freak result. We've all stood there, right? And one of the things, right, that we've been doing a lot of work, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with, timeline momentum charts. right? And that's basically when you when your team loses, the momentum string goes against you, right? Now that could go against you for 2 or 3 plays, 4 plays, 5 plays, right? It's about spotting that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best ways to deal with that is reviewing it afterwards and say, right, here's a spell of 5 minutes where 5 or 6 things didn't go well. And if you can highlight that to the players, they might spot that the last time. Now, I'm sure God, we spotted that against Mayo, but by God, like there was a massive momentum shift against them. It was very, very hard to get that back,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that
Mm-hmm.
just is what happened. You'll see a bounce from them this week, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, definitely. Periodization, you mentioned it there about, you know, your national league, and now you're getting ready for championship. You know, in the book as well, was there much taken in about periodization, and you know, how do you think it has sort of changed the way you coach now?
Well, see, I done a degree years ago in strength and conditioning, right? But I never wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to do was be able to talk to the strength and conditioning coaches, and I didn't want to be baffled by their lingo and stuff like that, because um, there's it's fantastic. Like as we talked about modern coaching, but the input that the S&C coaches have had in the GAA has been amazing. Okay, and it's fantastic. And like I mean, the GAA players, um, men and women up and down the country, are really, really fit now. Their fitness levels are fantastic. So what I would do there, like looking at that, is I'd always work closely to with these guys, right? But I think the starting base of your average club player nowadays is much higher than it was, say, 10 or
Mm-hmm.
11 years ago. Like when a fella came in for pre-season 10 or 11 years ago, the first thing you'd do is get rid of the belly and stuff like that. Very few of them come back like that now. So they're very, very fit, but they may not be football fit. So what is massive now in all sports now, as I said to mention earlier, is tactical periodization. And what tactical periodization basically is in a nutshell is you try to condition the team through activities like football activities and things that are basketball activities or rugby, whatever is relevant to your sport. Now you'd have a percentage. So say for instance you start training for an April league start,
Mm-hmm.
and you start training say in January. So say we had a 12 or 16 weeks run into it. Well, at the start, you would probably have about 40% sort of football and 60% conditioning. Now, that conditioning can be done with the ball. Like, I mean, I always mention to a lot of lads, if you want to go for a 20-minute or 30-minute run, there's nothing wrong soling the ball from one end of the field to the other, sticking it over the bar, getting it and soling it back down and do it. It's still a 20-minute run, but there's a ball in your hand, left foot and right foot. So that's what I mean by conditioning, right, with the ball. And then as you get closer, the percentage changes. So obviously when you get the last 4 weeks up to April, you probably would have 20% conditioning and 80% kind of football. That's the way I'd always do it. So I mean, again, that's based on fellas' condition now. And majority of fellas, as I said to you, and girls nowadays, they're in top nick now. You know, like very few of them are coming down for you to get them fit.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah. It's more a case of, you know, you're getting, you should be fit to play rather than coming to training to get fit, isn't it? You know, that seems to be the way football.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have you found even at
It is, yeah, yeah, very much so.
this with the pre-season then, Colm, do you run the fitness work as well, or is it more the skills based?
Yeah, I would do. I would always do my skill based all the time. But in my scenario with Mead now, is the S&C coach would like we're very lucky now. We've good S&C coach with Niall Ronan and Calvin Finnegan. But we've all the GPS and things like that. So
Yeah.
they would we've live GPS. So they're conditioning as we go. So they would allow me sort of condition the team with them monitoring it. And there's been times there where they'd say, listen, they're able for a bit more, we'll take them on some runs. So they do some mass runs with them at the end or things like that, you know. Or there'd be times where he'd quite correctly, they'd say to me, there's a lot of long sprinting of that, will you cut it down a little? You know, so it works both ways. So I'm very happy to have that them monitoring me. Or sometimes, listen, we talk too much, right, and the gaps are too big. So, you know, you nearly have to rewarm them up after going on rabbit. But it's lovely to have that sort of behind you. But like a good S&C coach will allow the team to be conditioned as much as possible through games and through activities that mirror what they're going to do when they take the field, you know. But as I said to you, we're lucky that they have a good gauge on where the fitness is. Now, they still have their gym sessions, and again, early season, they could be up to 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week in the gym, where now it's maintenance gym work, where they're only in the gyms probably 1 night a week now, you know. And what we try to do now, our gym work, is trying to be functional work, where you would have a lot of kind of more sort of box and stuff like that, medicine ball work and things like that, because that's more functional really to for this time of year, maintaining their strength and the power.
Yeah, yeah. The way you're talking, Colin, it's just it's fascinating even just to see where Gaelic football is at the minute. Um, I know I joked and said Bielsa of the GA, but for me, Bielsa, Pep Guardiola, that's where I sort of look to get my inspiration, and I'm a bit obsessive about what they're doing and with their game plays and their build-ups and that. Where have you drawn your coaching philosophies from them?
Well, I don't really have philosophies, right? I'm not really I don't really have sort of any coaching philosophies. I have a few kind of sort of beliefs, like I believe there's certain behaviors and beliefs like that a team must have, and I think the first one really is that it has to be player driven, right? I like to work with groups of players and that are highly driven and highly into what they're doing. Now, I hold back in saying the word passionate because I think passion is used wrong. I think best way I can explain passion is like I'd love to be able to dance or play the guitar, right? But I can't. And the reason I don't do it is because I'd be no good at it. So I've a fear to it. But if I did practice playing the guitar or dancing, right, I'd practice it more. And then I get more passionate about it. And then it becomes a passion. So the passion comes after it. Mm-hmm. So what I'm really coming to say is that you pick up inspiration from sort of the groups you're working with. And they fire you up. So if they start buying into what you're doing, they sort of become more passionate about what you're doing, and then you become more passionate, and the whole thing just kind of rises together. So that's what Pep Guardiola and Marcelo Bielsa do an awful lot of. Even though they've a lot of money at their disposal and they can buy best players, but they do an awful lot of background work on the character of the person. Mm-hmm. And if the person wants to get better as a person and as a footballer, and they hat and go for them because they know they can work with them. And what happens is they rub off you and you get better. So again, that I don't know if that's a philosophy or not, right? So you're buzzing off them, and you just want to be with players. Like I've been in lots of teams. Young players are fantastic, right? Because all young players, they're just like sponges, right? And they haven't developed the fear, right? They haven't made the mistakes that's going to knock them back. They just go for it. They just keep going for it, right? So again, it's about reinforcing that all the time. So I mean, that's what I like to do. And so I kind of draw from the likes of them. And I love Eddie Jones as well. I just he's had a fantastic career. I've read his book several times, mm-hmm. And what I think is fascinating now is that do you know what he does for downtime for his holidays? He goes over to Japan to coach. Where so that man just loves coaching, right? And so his wife's from Japan and his mother was from Japan, but for his 3 to 6 weeks holidays a year, he goes back to coach a club team that he knows well in Japan, right, for a hobby, because he just loves coaching and so I love stories like that, and I love listening to him. And he's I'm not sure if I can say it on a podcast, but he comes across as a see you next Tuesday, yes. Right? But he loves that,
yeah,
because people kind of sort of they don't know what to make of him, a little bit standoffish of him, right? And he plays on that. And but deep down, he's a very well-read man, and he's always looking for new ideas in coaching, Mm-hmm. And apparently, right, and I'd love to do it. But apparently, he's very approachable. You can send him an email, and if you make an impression on him, he'll invite you over to watch England train, So I might do that one day.
Sure, why not? Stuart Lancaster as well is very popular amongst coaches as well. Colm, isn't he? He's one as well that people, I think, has more mentality though, isn't it? People look to leadership.
Yeah, he shares a lot of information. He shares a lot of information too. He's very, 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 very accommodating that way. And I've been in a few talks to him. I was on a small talk with him a while back there. There was only 30 people, and we got really up close to him. And to hear some of the stories, and it's really, really good. But he wants to learn too, and that's the key to all these guys. John, is they want to learn too. And they see an opportunity to learn everywhere. And and if you have that sort of mindset, then your players going to respond to that, because they'll approach you with ideas. They'll make suggestions. Like I say to the lads sometimes, like, you know better. You're out there. Like I'm not. I'm only telling you what a few ideas, but you know better. Like. Mm-hmm. You know, and that takes a while to for them to actually say, you know what, he's not just saying that, he means it. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. What about the activities then? What sports would you take activities from? Um, you see a lot of soccer drill. I was going to say drills there, Colm, sorry.
Mm.
Activities not on the on YouTube and that. Um, you don't
Yeah.
see as much rugby as well. As well documented. As you said, you don't see too many GA teams putting up their activities or
No.
what they're doing
No.
currently. It's always a couple of years behind. This is what we done in
Yeah. Yeah.
2018. So where do you get your inspiration that way from?
Well, look, I'd be always looking for new ideas, not necessarily new activities, right? But new ideas and little bits that you can add to it, right? A couple of areas, a couple of rabbit holes I'm going down at the minute now is ice hockey, right? Ice hockey is tremendous because it's so fast, and you can go from having no space to lots of space within seconds,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the decision making of that is fantastic. So there's lots and lots of great ice hockey coaching activities on YouTube. I'm also looking at things like Olympic handball and netball, right? Purely from a handling point of view, because, like, I mean, Air Force touches our hands, right? I'm a really, really big believer in that, right? Air Force touches in the hands, and even Eddie Jones talks about this thing called an early catch, where instead of waiting for the ball to come to you, you're reaching and putting your hands to it. We went down the road where we bought these basketball mitts. We got them from America last year, where they're little balls that kind of with a strap that sits on the palm of your hand, and it makes it more difficult for you to catch the ball. Now, Joe Smith, actually, I was in his company once when we were talking with him, and he said to me, which I was a bit starstruck, so I didn't really answer properly, but he said to me, do you not find that the players are reaching for the ball with them? And I didn't really know how to answer it. And it's only when I was going home in the car, I was saying to myself, why didn't I say that to him? That's kind of what I want. I want them to I want them to put the hands out towards the ball, right? So again, I think in Gaelic football, like, your first touch is your hands,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can get an early touch, right, like and don't bring it into your chest, keep it out in front of you, and have strong hands, and you can protect it. It just opens a little bit more avenues to you. So again, we're exploring a lot of that, and that's where netball and all them comes in. They work an awful lot on handling and touch, and then pivoting with your feet. And we have a saying that we say to the lads: got to be where your feet are. So if you get good footwork for tackling, and you're right there where your feet are in terms of getting proper contacts on your opponent and tackling the ball only and proper tackle. Like, a lot of teams are working on traps and things like that now, but it's so frustrating when you get your trap set up and you've 2 or 3 fellas and you're blown up for free because someone put a hand on the back. That's very, very annoying, that is.
Yeah.
So again, he wasn't where his feet were. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we're, little things like that. So you pick up an awful lot of them things in down sports. So I'd be looking at ice hockey, Olympic handball, and netball. That's where I am at the minute.
Class. I seen that. I don't know how old the article was, but you were saying about rotating the forwards. Not having a set positions for the 6 forwards. I'm just wondering, is that still something you're pursuing, or is it still viable?
Well, I tell you, like what that was, like, that came from myself and the other great Meath coach, Sean Kelly. And we used to do an award 2 workshop called Systems of Play. And what we were doing is we were kind of highlighting different systems of play that's out there. So that was one of the ones we used. And that was from my club team, Newtown Blues, when they were under 14s. And we were coaching them. And what we did at that time, right, we were introducing them to a game plan. And the game plan was quite simply, for 10 minutes in each half, that after every attack that we had to rotate in sort of a clockwise position, right? And it used to cause mayhem, because at that stage, all kids are growing differently. So you could have a fella that's nearly 5'10" marking a fella that's 5 foot nothing. Okay. And normally what happens in that level of football, you put big on big or small on small. But because they were rotating, we were exploiting these positions for a little while, and it used to cause mayhem. But the players, like, I would call it an entry level sort of game plan or system of play. But what the coaching behind it was to open the minds to future game plans, if you get me. So the players there would be saying, right, we know that certain game plans work, so they're more kind of receptive, and we would always we would always give them a choice. We would always let them call it themselves. I'll give you a good example. And we'd use that a lot. And we got to the under-16 championship final, and we were using it, and we were playing in the dock, and the bus broke down. So there was mayhem. I had to drive down, and we packed kids into cars and that. So we got no warm up, and we were out on the pitch. And after 2 or 3 minutes, the guy that we named full forward was out in the left wing. And one of my fellow coaches said to me, "Did you switch that column?" I said, "No, I didn't switch it." So I was running around in, and I said, "Kieran," I said, "What are you doing out there?" He said, "Oh, we're just doing our move column." I'd forgot about it. Done cleanly, but they didn't. Do you know? So that just shows you the power that of young people. They want them ideas. Young kids, they want them ideas. Like we had cleanly forgot because of the bus breaking down, but the players didn't. Do you know? So I learned from that. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. You learn from everywhere.
Class. It just shows you maybe coaching's overrated during game day.
Do you know something? Look, it is like, you know, we were talking like even it's very different now, right? Because you've no dressing room, you're out in the stand, right? It's even relaying messages. It's just so strange, right? And where if you had a tactics board and things like that, now if you brought a tactics board out, I think it'll look a little silly. People, you know, you look like you're not organised or anything like that, because the coaching should be done before that, really. But you know, you'd have all that stuff in the dressing room, but now outside you don't have anything like that now, you know.
Are you wary of the cameras and microphones maybe picking stuff up as well, or is it just gone?
Well, you know what you are, but like if you are a team, like again, a lot of teams communicate differently. They communicate visually and they communicate verbally and whatnot. But you can hear all calls. You can hear the opponent's calls, like war and this, that, and the other, and you can kind of get a sense of what they're trying to do. And like we probably wouldn't hear them in a packed Park Talton or Crow Park. You know, you wouldn't hear them calls, but certainly in an empty Parnell Park or in Dunganny, you can hear everybody. You can even hear what the boys are saying about you.
You see the way it seems to be more brought in at top level now, coach as well. The calls come, as you said there, like for every kick out there's a call for something. Even during the game there's a call. Do you think that's, you know, the momentum swing, as you were saying as well? You know, is there a call for that? You know, is it opened your eyes as well to different things?
Yeah, well, I do think I do think also that a lot of teams have false calls. They're shouting things that mean nothing, right? And I've noticed that a lot. And we probably try to do that ourselves. But one thing I know, right, is if you get a team communicating between themselves, right, they're more of a chance to play a little bit more closer to the flow. Because if you're communicating loudly, you're playing in the moment. You know, you're not dwelling on anything. You're passing on information of what's coming next and what we're trying to do. So it keeps you kind of in the moment. So I'd be a big fan of that if you could. Like, I mean, like a lot of you want teams passing on messages as much as possible, right? And it just, to me, it's communication, and I think that's very, very important. Like, and I think it's not necessarily what they're communicating; it's just that they are communicating, because it keeps teams kind of clued in and switched off. You know, because at county level, the biggest thing I see is the sort of mental aspect of it, of the concentration, the staying in the now, you know, that sort of stuff, and not letting mistakes affect you. That's very, very evident there, because you look, all these guys can play. I keep saying this, John, like, I mean, show me one bad into county footballer. Like, there's not. They can all play, right? The difference is mentally. You know, and what I mean by mentally is some fella might just switch off for 5 seconds, and that might be all he needs to concede a point or a goal, and then he's thinking about that, and then he's out for another few minutes, and that's, so, you know, that's massive. So if somebody's kind of passing on information to you, you know, you haven't time to sort of wallow in that mistake. You know, you say, well, I know what's coming. I have to be ready for this. You know, so I'm a big fan of that. If we could get it.
Is there any tactic that you've seen recently that you thought, geez, I'm going to copy that, or not copy, but I'm going to use that and put my own spin to it?
Yeah, well, I copy everything. I don't mind saying that. Like, you have to be, as they say, a magpie coach. You have to, like, but like if we were to try to do, say, let's say sometimes what Donegal do, like an awful lot what Donegal do, and pivots around Michael Murphy. So, you know, it's very hard to replicate some of them things. But for instance, their kick out that they have where he taps it down for Ryan McHugh to run into, it's fantastic kick out. I think they tried it a couple of times against Tyrone there, but Tyrone might have been just a little bit. I like the way Tyrone swap well, when he's playing Peter Hart and Matty
Donnelly.
what's his name there? Where they
Matty
swap
Donnelly.
from half back, Matty Donnelly swap from half back to half. Yeah, like I like that. I think that's, but then you'd have to have two very similar players that can play half forward and half back, little things like that, But I just think that's all that stuff is very, very smart, and I'd be a big fan of that. Again, Dublin have load of tactics, like you can see, like Dublin. Packing their defence, getting everyone behind the ball, and the way Dean Rock positions himself, not inside the full forward line, out around the D, and just has to swing his left foot and right foot to it. But again, like that's a definite tactic. You can see Monaghan do something similar, but you would have to have a player the caliber of Conor McManus or Dean Rock to do that.
Yeah.
So again, I'd love getting ideas from them teams, but again, they might not suit your the players that you have, but certainly the ideas of it is really, really good.
As tactics then come, when did you see the first real explosion in the tactical warfare that we're having? I know, like the Donegal, Jim McGuinness era, then Dublin with their basketball setup, but now what way would you say it's gone now?
Well, I would always I sort of class modern football from 2010, so that would coincide with them guys, right? And they were great, like Pat Gilroy, Jim McGuinness, great coaches, fellas who really were studious about the games, and come up with a lot of ideas. Like I stand corrected in this, but I think Dublin, a lot of Dublin's influence is soccer based rather than basketball based. They had Lisa Fallon, who's over coaching in the UK now, in with them for the last couple of years, and I know it was about their out to in runs and things like that, their hand passing over the top, like their balls, their threaded soccer balls and things like that. Mm-hmm. I also think about their drift defence as rugby based, with the last man being Philly McMahon or whatever, calling the defence to drift at angles and things like that. So I think they were quite happy to peddle the basketball thing outside, where secretly they were working on other setups. But again, that's the beauty of our game. We can kind of rob a little bit from everybody, So I think Dublin were very, very they are to the cutting edge of tactics and ahead of tactics. But what always amazes me about them is that they seem to always make the correct decisions at the right times, the players do on the field. Mm-hmm. And I think that shows huge leadership. I think they have a few fellas on the team that's really, really crucial to how they perform. Not necessarily performance, but going back to what I said to you earlier on, communication. They're key to organising their team, knowing when to go, knowing when to stay, knowing when to tactically foul, knowing when to, and that there's a couple of them there. Like, I mean, if you look closely to Brian Fenton, who's a top class player, like he doesn't really be back pulling balls under the crossbar or really making last ditch tackles. He's always on the periphery of the counter attack, where he can inject that fabulous pace he has and take his long range points. So there's an awful lot of tactical things that they do that's not really, look, the guys that are analysing the game probably aren't analysing it properly. They're telling you about this, that, and the other, and that's not what's really happening. So again, that's going back to one of your earlier questions about playing Division 1. When you sit in the sideline and watch these top teams, you kind of get to see the big picture of what they're doing, and that's fantastic. That is, Now it's a credit to all. Like I go to James Horn, right? As I said, Declan Bonner, Mickey Hart, fantastic coaches and fantastic setups that are asking you questions that you're finding it difficult to answer. So that goes back to your training, that if you can create scenarios, right, that teams have to solve themselves. I'm not saying it gets them ready, but it kind of prepares them for what they're going to face these teams, because they're not going to be predictable in what they do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just mind-boggling, like how much information you need now to be at intercounty level. How long do you think it is before you get it right? From the day you walk through the door to you implementing your plan.
Well, that's really good. That's really good too, right? Because it's good to hear you asking that, because it takes a long time, right? And like if you have it, I think it takes about 2 or 3 years really for you to embed and to get a team tactically astute. And what I mean by tactically astute means that, like, they're giving you high performance all the time. And what high performance is the 1% of the 1% and sticking to it, right? And so you won't see that every week improving, right? And again, if you're a supporter and whatever, you're looking at everything in results. You're not seeing the 1% of the 1% improvement, right? And again, players mightn't see that either, unless, you know, your training is geared towards, and they're really feeling that, yeah, look, we're being prepared for this all the time, you know. So it takes a long time, and like some of the best, I don't really like talking about successes or things like that, but some of the best successes I had was with my own club. And basically, when I look back on it, the answer was staring me in the face. Like, I spent 10 or 12 years coaching the majority of these players, from 7 years of age up to they recently won 3 senior championships in a row. Now, I'm not saying that's anything to do with me, but I'm saying is I spent 10 or 12 years with them, coaching them twice a week, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, right. Again, you were under no pressure there because it's your club. Like, nobody's going to get rid of you there in your club, you know what I mean? And like most clubs, you're there because nobody else wants to do it, you know, or you have a son playing. So like that's where we're different in the GA. So again, it takes a long time. But what happens really is people get spooked, right? And a few bad results go, and this, that, and the other, and they say, "I have change that man or get a new man in," and things like that, you know. But that's where the stronger counties, like you take, for instance, Dublin again, right? Like it's been a seamless transition. Like they're going to Desi Farrell here now, you know, like, and they're doing it right. I always believe that counties should have their own man managing them. Now you can hire in, let's say, expertise, but Andy McEntee is a Mead man through and through, right? He stands for what Mead is, right? So he has to head up, in my eyes, the Mead team. Same way with a loud man has to head up what's allowed. A down man has to head up down. Now you can bring in coaches and S&C fellas from everywhere, but that way, right, you have that continuity, and you might get a chance where he gets a chance to put them 3 or 4 years in, you know, because that's what I really think is needed, John, myself, you know.
Yeah, no, I can see what I can see why, Colm, definitely. You know, it's amazing too, like underage, you know, the pride you get as well whenever you do get a bit of success at, even at minor levels, at senior level too, isn't it? It's something else.
Oh, it is, like, you know, like I can remember like when we had them at under 7 rates, we had a few little how would I put it, things that we wanted to follow through every year. Like one of the things we did was, with correct permission and everything, we'd video a match every year. So we've had matches from them to 8 years of age all the way up to 20s. We'd bring them on a trip every year. We'd always bring them to Crow Park and things like that, right? And I remember in training, right, I remember Alan Brogan in a Leinster final hand passed the ball over someone's head and collected it when it bounced, right? And when we were training Tuesday night, all the kids were trying that out. Now, there's the best coaches. The best coaching sessions are games, really are, and they see that. Like, I didn't see that, and I remember saying, "Where did you learn that?" And so, "Oh, Alan Brogan did it through the day," you know. So their successes, like that's what our job is. Like, is to kind of expose them to the greats of the game and see can we inspire them, because that's what inspiration is breathing life into them. And if a hand pass or a gooch hop or some of the great scores that you see, like that's the best inspiration that these young kids need. You know.
What's your thinking then, Colm, with you know, with having a coaching officer then and having the same sort of style or same sort of coaching system the whole way through clubs?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, like for instance, talk about county for a moment. Like, would it be fair to say Down have a perceived style of football? Like, I mean, when I think of Down, I think of you know, really stylish players, pacey footballers, right? Expansive football. I'd always look at Down like that, and I think that's the way Down play. So again, you would imagine that all the Down teams would have that sort of swagger, or be coached with that swagger, where sort of a little bit of creativity would be encouraged. You know, like, I mean, I'm saying to all the Meath players since I came in, you have to have a trick. You have to have a trick, right? And some of them, like, a lot of them have a trick, but I'm a big believer in this, John, right? Is that if you don't have a trick at 28, you can still get one. Right. You can still work on one, you know, and like it, just because you're 28 and you don't have a dummy soul or that doesn't mean that you won't get one. It's about you applying and practicing and find the time. Like, if you're just doing what the coach asks you on a Tuesday and Thursday playing county, it's not enough. You have to be at it a couple of days a week on your own, and why not work on that trick on your own? And I'm telling you, like the amount of fellas that are now working on that and trying to find a trick. So, you know, like, you know, that would be kind of you would say that to all the kids. You know, if you're a coaching officer, you'll be asking your coaches maybe to say, encourage them to find a trick, encourage things like that. So little things like that. If, like, my club, like again, we would like to think we play sort of expansive football, hard running football. And so we try to get our teams playing something similar to that, giving goals. Like, for instance, you've heard all the stories about Kerry suspending touches at young ages with the whole purpose of getting their heads up. Like, I'd be a big believer in things like that. And that's why you do things like that in training, where you say to them, no touches for the first 5 or 10 minutes, simply because you want the head up, or the ball move between 3 and 5 seconds, simply because you want, it's not because you're not interested in working on the rest of the skills, it's because the most important skill is to get the head up and scan. So again, that I would believe in a coaching officer or a head of coaching, I'd call them principles. So you have to make sure that all your teams have them principles. Like, I mean, it's very hard to go in to tell a coach, I want you to play this way or that way.
Yeah.
But you should certainly say, I want you to kind of develop as many players who can lift their head first. And that's measurable, like, that's very, very measurable.
Yeah, because just as you're saying there, I never got it, because when people says, oh, we have the same coaches, or we play the same way all the way through, I was thinking, how can you play like like the under 12s, under 14s?
Yeah.
You only have the same players like as a senior team. Like, it's impossible. But as you said, maybe it's a roundabout way of saying the 5 principles from each age group.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, you take Cross McGlen, I remember reading about them at the time, and they liked a lot of long kicking, so come in, you can do a lot of long kicking in your training games with under 12 years of age. Like, you could kind of that, there's lots of games like, I mean, you were talking to me earlier on about or mentioned about go-to games and activities. Like, one of my go-to games, it was in the first book there, is I call it the wall pass game, right? And I can tell you now, I don't mind saying it, one night I was sitting down in Oriel Park, freezing cold. One of my sons was on an emerging talent program, and they were training there, and the Dundalk senior team was training out on the pitch, and Stephen Kenny was training them, and he played this game for about 30 minutes. And what it was he just had a large square, and in the middle of each line of the square, he had a static player who acted as a wall. So the team in possession had 4 extra players to play to, and he just kicked it to them, the ball came back. And I said to myself, I'm going to try that. And what I done with that was, that's, as I said to you, I was changing my outlook in games, in that I went away from lines, kicking straight lines. And that's where we do all our skills now, through a game like that. So you have your passing, your catching, your kicking, your hand passing, but it's in game movement. So you've left foot passing, right foot passing, you've scanning. So when I want that intense, I don't let any of the players have a touch. So it has to be moved. So you keep possession, and when you get a chance, you kick long to a wall. It encourages second and third runs. It's everything you want in the game. But I call it our skills. We're practicing our skills, rather than just lines kicking up and down. We're practicing our skills, and you get everything: punt kicking, hook kicking. So again, that would be a go-to mine. So I think you get an awful lot of principles in that and things like that.
What are your go-to, if you were going in as a coaching seminar or not, what's for defense, forwards, midfielders, and what would you go to then?
Well, okay. I probably wouldn't have, like, straight up, I probably wouldn't have go-to, but what I would have is, I would have go-to activities. So for instance, no training session without shooting goals and points. Right, no training session. So for instance, let's say this week when we're playing Monaghan, right, we will shoot for goals and points, but they'll be unopposed. And one of the reasons they're unopposed is you don't want to get an injury. Okay, so that's that. But every night training, and then every night tackling. It has to be tackling. Now, again, what I've learned there, right, is there's no point in running tackling exercise unless you're actually coaching them, where you're spotting and fixing, or spotting and acting. Like, so for instance, you do an awful lot of work on your footwork, right? Your contact with your hands, where your hands go. I'd be always badgering the referees that I know, saying, right, what would you blow up? I showed them videos of clips and training that. Would you blow that up? Would you do that? Right? And try to get that information. So they'd be my 2 go-to things nearly in every session. That there'd have to be an element of tackling, and definitely there has to be an element of scoring every night. And something, players love shooting.
Yeah.
So when they're every night, they love that. But look, again, you get good at what you do, right? If you run around the field, you get good at running around the field. If you do a lot of tackling, you'd hopefully get good at tackling. So that's a simple motto that I have.
Yeah, I was playing on a team, and our big thing was the manager or coach didn't blow for free kicks. And my thing was, sure, if we're not
Right.
blowing for free kicks, what do you think is going to happen on a Friday night whenever we're playing? You know, it's the boys
Yeah,
were
yeah,
murdering
absolutely,
the
yeah.
opposition. Just with the footwork there, Colm, how did you come about then thinking, you know, this is the right stance to do? Like, was there any other, like, was it boxing stance or anything out there that you're, that, you know, or was it, where'd you get that from?
Well, definitely, like again, an awful lot of this we just accumulated, right? Again, I
Hmm.
I I, don't- I like I think boxing has an awful lot of similarities in footwork to Gaelic football because you're moving your hands and your feet kind of at similar times, right? So we want that. I think right an awful lot of like as I mentioned to you earlier on, be where your feet are. Like I think like I try to paint pictures when I'm coaching,
Hmm.
particularly this might have come from coaching kids. So if you say to a group of kids, stand on your balls, your feet, you get lots of giggles and things like that. They don't even know where the balls of the feet are. But if you say to them, stand on your second row of studs, right, you're putting a clearer picture into their head. And if you can say, put one foot in front of the other, right, and all this sort of stuff, right, so you're painting a picture. But it's about breaking it down, right? And again, what happens when you lead with this foot when he's running this direction, okay? How you line the fellow up. There's a couple of different things, like you've got facing and chasing tackling. So if I'm facing you, I need to stand differently. If I'm chasing you, I need to stand differently.
Hmm.
Like for instance, if I'm chasing you, 9 times out of 10, the ball, my hand goes around your neck from behind, you know. So,
Yeah.
you know, you have to really, you can't just run a coach or a tackling exercise without breaking that down and saying, we don't need any hands in there. Or the best way to do it is, you know, let him make the mistake and ask him now, what did you do there? You know,
Hmm.
creative questioning, right? Because that way it sticks. You know, what would you do differently? Like, why did I stop it? And you know, what did he do when you did that? Like, oh, that's the way you have to coach them, right? And then eventually, like, you'd be hoping that when fellas get up to speed, right, what you need to do then, John, which is the hardest part, is put him in an environment where he's going to be tested to think correctly under pressure, because they can all do it in the Lions and in training games and
Hmm.
things like that. But your training has to have a sort of an edge to it that's going to be tougher to a game for the skills to stick then, you know. So one of the things to do there would be to get him really, really fatigued before you have him chasing the player and things like that, and see can he stick to the principles of proper tackling. So we do an awful lot of work on that. Like, and again, to do that, right, is if you can imagine, like all that's a massive jigsaw, and it's putting all them pieces together. So you might be doing that over a couple of nights. You might be doing your first bit on kind of, you know, your footwork, your first bit on where to put the hands, first bit on the contacts, and then you have to take him out of his comfort zone and get him really, really tired. See can he continue to do it right, you know? And if he's not, then maybe you have to go back then a couple of stages and keep at
Hmm.
the other bits, you know. But that takes a lot of time, and sometimes you're doing all that in the training. Players don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even know why you're doing that. Like they don't even know that you're layering on all the time, you know, and that you haven't progressed to that, you know, and it's important to explain that, like to them, listen, lads, this is
Hmm.
why we're doing it. We're adding all the time, you know.
That's what I was going to ask you. Whenever do you explain every single activity you're doing, or you know, you're one of the frontiers for the small-sided games as well. Um, and there's been a shift in GA with more people looking for training sessions with small-sided games. You know, do you explain and develop your training? You know, say Andy's not happy with something that happened the week before. You know,
Yeah,
is that
yeah. Like there's a couple of things in that, right? Sometimes, right, you have to be what's called a proactive spectator, right? You can talk too much.
Mhm.
So again, sometimes I would say to the fellas in advance, right, via WhatsApp or whatever, tonight is there's going to be a lot of stop start, right? Tonight is an awful lot, like, so they're prepared for that. Just like as I
Mhm.
said to you, we're having a low RPE.
Yeah.
You're informing them that tonight. Now that would become to your tactical periodization. That would be built into a night where you don't need to be really hitting any high numbers in
Yeah.
your in your GPS. So it allows you that, and again, players are aware of that. But there's nothing worse than over coaching. Like so, sometimes you're better off being a proactive sort of coach and leave some of the stuff for what I call classroom coaching. So you spotted a few things that you're right. I have to speak to John about that. I leave that laugh training rather than stopped. And then you
Mhm.
can go and you can maybe walking off the pitch and say, "Do you remember when you went into number 4 and blah blah and you did this? You know, do you think that was the right thing?" That sort of stuff. Rather than
Right.
stopping that, right? Because if you
Yeah.
do that, like you're going over and over again. So one of the things that we like to do is, as fellas know, is we record all the training sessions, and so I'd like to look back at them at times, and there's things then that I would have missed during the game, during the training session that I'd see again, like like when you're doing sort of unopposed work, right? you have a tendency where fellas kind of slow down completely to make sure that their technique is immaculate. And I'd be at them saying, don't slow down, you know, nobody on you, right? So there's no reason for you to slow down. Make the mistake, because that's where the learning is, by you making the mistake, right? Where you're unbalanced when you kick, how was your supporting for all that sort of stuff. But if you slow down, you won't do that in the game.
Yeah.
You know, so again, like, I mean, there's key things like that. So, you know, you have to explain to fellas why you're doing that, like why you're putting them under pressure in terms of speed to do it, to execute it as quick as you can, right? Even though there's nobody on you, like stuff like that. And you're putting demands on them, like you're trying to get them out of the comfort zone, because that's where the learning is once they get out of that, you know.
Mm-hmm. First class, first class. What's your pet hate in coaching, Colm? And do you know what it is, in your opinion, what makes a good coach as well?
Well, as I said, my pet hate would be really like watching particularly younger teams doing exercises without the football. You know, I just can't understand this, and I hate. I'd never open my mouth. It's not my business, but I hate when people say they're not fit enough, especially young kids. They're not fit enough. We're going to have to do an extra lot of running with these. Like, I mean, fair enough. That might be an object sort of observation that they're not fit enough. But yeah, condition them with a ball. You know, you can certainly, you can do lots of different activities that you're going to be making them running harder. You can do fartlek running. You can do speed endurance with a football. You know, there's lots of ways of doing it. Like but you know, and that way, you know, you're tricking them in, and you're getting them, you know, always got a ball in the hand. They're always learning something. A good coach is, look, I think we're a community-based organization, and we can't get away from that. So anybody that wants to give their time is always very, very welcome. And lots of people have different traits. I think the biggest trait a good coach has to have is, in my eyes, it has to be able to build rapport with the players. Again, if you affect the person, you affect the performance, and that's getting to know the people. Like I think, and I've heard lots of people say it. I've heard Peter Canavan say, like, you'll always remember how a coach made you feel, not what he told you. And I believe in that, really. Like, I mean, so I think that's the first thing. I think, like, we're in a great position where you're not really judging results, particularly for coaching clubs, your own clubs, and underage players, and that. You're not being paid to do it. Like, people are very, very generous with their time. So if you're kind of have a good way about you, you're making an impact with your players enjoy you. And the best way to tell that is if they keep turning up or training, right? That's the best feedback you can get. So I think that's the first thing I'd always look for in a good coach. Are they getting on with the team? Do the team like them? Is he building rapport? That sort of stuff. Because then they become open-minded then, and then, you know, there's lots of areas there where they're willing to learn then, you know.
How would you, if a manager's turned around and you didn't believe with his playing style, would you still go as a coach of him, or would you try and adapt? You know.
Yeah, that's a good question too, because, like, no, I tell you, like, I don't really mind that. I think that'd be a challenge to me, right? Okay, so if you went into a manager who wanted to play ultra defensive, I'd have to say to myself, right, I haven't really coached a lot of this, but it'd be a new challenge to me, you know. So I'd give it a go, like, and see what I do. I'm not saying I'd be able to do it, but it'd be a new challenge, because that's what coaching is, right? And I'm a big believer, right, of the sort of chain of command as such. Like, I mean, there has to be a manager, and he at the end of the day, he's the one that has to go to bed at night and say, I should have stuck to that, or should have stuck to that. You know, we're there to support him, right? But we're also there, in my eyes, like, when you're standing like I've been there before, when you're standing on the sideline and somebody comes over and whispers to you, we're in trouble at number 3, you kind of know you're in trouble at number 3. Like, what you want someone to say, would you not do such and such, put such and such back at 3, you know? So you're there, I think, to challenge the manager, but ultimately you're there to support him too. So I would, you know, like, a couple of things there. Like, I mean, we have a laugh there. Like, the choice of language people use is very, very much, it's just very much, it paints pictures and it puts bad sort of images in your head. Like, for instance, the lazy player, right? I always say to the lads, and people say, your man's very lazy. I always say, he's not lazy, he just has selective participation. And what I mean by that is, right, is we all have a corner forward who doesn't want to chase back, right? And like, in training, he's the last around the laps, and he gets perceived as being lazy, but that's selective participation. I know it's not right, but he's saying this, like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to go back there, but he has lots of other traits. So he's been kind of pinned as lazy, right? Where you have to kind of get away and say, right, okay, I make a deal with these fellas and I say to them, right, if that's your, I'm just using that as an example, to go on forward. I said, you need to be help side when we don't have the ball. And he said, what does that mean? I said, well, you need to be air side in front of your man. And if that means up in your area, you keep him there, job done. You know, but if he goes, you've got to be help side, which is air side of the pitch, right? So then what you're doing is your man is saying, this fella's not getting up the field. Right, so he's stopping him there, so he doesn't have to do the chasing. But you created a kind of, you made a deal with him. You know what I mean? So that's coaching, right? That's kind of rather than writing him off as a lazy player, you know, who gets the bent finger, you know, and gets taken off. Then you know he's, you know, you're working on something with him.
That's very true. What would you do if you didn't um, believe in what the manager was doing? Come either, as you said, team selection or anything like that. There, don't know. Has there any been ever in the past been any instances where you've said no, that's you're totally wrong or anything like that?
And I would never say you're totally wrong. I would kind of say like I don't agree with that, right? But if I don't agree with him, I would have to have facts as to why I didn't agree with him. You know, that sort of stuff. Now, again, like when we sit down, there's 4 of us that pick the team, 5 of us started to pick the team, and very seldom we all pick the same team. You know, and that's good, like, you know, and there's always kind of like there's I don't mind saying this, but I mean, I've been on the sideline there and someone would say to me, geez, their number 5 starts scoring 3 points. I said, geez, I didn't know it was that, you know, like we all have blind spots and things like that. So, you know, you make, it's very hard, we make fairly general presumptions, you know, so again, I try to have fact-based things. So, I mean, when a team is picked, or if somebody wants, if I don't agree with, say, who wants to go into the full forward line or the half back line, I have to try to base it on facts. You know, so I'd have to kind of have to say, well, listen, this is why I don't think he should be in, because I A, B, or C, you know, that sort of stuff, and argue from that way, and rather than just making it personalities wise, like I just don't like it. You know, I don't think it's any good. You have to have a couple of I think fact based, and I think once you're fact based, like people will argue facts over facts, you know, and that way it's more sensible.
You see, maybe as a goalkeeper, then you know, in a past life, that you've been watching boys playing in front of you. You can see things maybe that other people can't. Do you think during a game that that's one of your strengths as well? That you know you can maybe spot traits other teams are doing or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like I definitely, after playing goals for so long, it does give you a different perspective on the game. Like you can definitely see shapes, and you can definitely see sort of patterns. But I think you'd see them in your own team quicker, right? Because you're kind of more focused on them. So you would see, like for instance, when there's no wit in your attack, you'd see when there's no when a team is pulling you out, and when you're biting to what they're doing, things like that, you know. So again, I think that would be kind of certainly one of the areas where I kind of would watch a lot. It's difficult. I think what happens is now when we've all that much data on each other, that when you're playing like some Monaghan and Dublin and things like that, now, you'll sit down and watch hours and hours of videos of them, and you come up with an assumption of they play this, that, the other, and we can overanalyze it and forget that an awful lot of this is off the cuff. You know, like it's bespoke, it's whatever happens on the day, ball might bounce this way or that way, you know. And it's important not to excuse me, it's important not to get over sort of done on your analysis, thinking like that is robotic, because it's that and but certainly from a goalkeeper point of view, I think you can definitely notice patterns and traits of your own team quicker.
And do you think just as you're saying there, Dublin and Monaghan and the likes, will every team have a trait that they've been trying, Colin, do you think, like going into championship football?
Yeah, they do. Like and look, this is why I think this year is interesting, because you'll revert to type, you'll revert to what you know best, and you'll revert to what you've been coached most. So a lot of the managers this year have probably lost out on time, like particularly the new managers who wanted probably to make their mark. They probably haven't got the time they wanted. So you'll see a lot of teams, if you do get lucky enough to kind of put them on the edge, they'll revert to type. Now Dublin have a lot of systems that they can revert to. Like Dublin are very, very like they don't be they don't be sort of labeled it, but they are quite defensive. You know, they work an awful lot of hard around the middle third, and they're constantly boxing off the middle channels, not to concede goals and things like that, and that's a definite tactic, and you can see that when you put a bit of pressure on them, that they they overload in them areas. Again, I spoke about their attacking strategies where it's kind of out to in and getting the shooters on the outside of the ball there, where they'll try to break you down for a goal, and they sort of have a time frame. If they don't get within 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, ball's recycled very quick, and who's out there to slot it over the bar? So you have an awful lot of them like that. That doesn't go away. And one thing I always mention about Dublin, right? Again, probably talk a lot about them, is everybody's fair idea what they're going to do, John. But they can't stop them because they're that good. You have a fair idea. I think every team that sits down to analyze them come up with great strategies, and they come up with great ways, and they really try to really work out how to do it. It's very, very hard to still stop them because they're so good. The quality's so good,
Yeah, we have a dominant force in down as well in Kilcoo, and like it's it is like you can analyze them, but you know what they're going to do. It's just how to stop them as well it seems to be the problem. Colm, your book absolutely fantastic, and as I said, the small sided game sort of has taken coaching now from underage to seniors to a new level. When did that first come in, and what's the next stage do you think that Gaelic football coaching will take?
Well, I think I think Mickey Whelan was involved in I think it was DCU at the time, doing a lot of studies on the sort of go games and things like that. So he was a pioneer of that. But like an awful lot of people kind of misinterpret what the small sided games are for, right? The small sided games are really for is to help develop the skills that are relevant to what's going to happen in games. Okay, so by having small sided games, you're getting more touches, you're executing the movements and the skill patterns that are similar to the game, relevant to your age group. So it helps develop the skills sort of that you will use more in the games. Where straight lines is it's not developing the skills the way they're meant to be used. And if you do an awful lot of linear work, right, it restricts your improvement in games. So that's why that was what was brought in, right? But that's at a very young age. But what you cannot replace is coaching, right? Is when you're in amongst them and kind of asking them questions of why did you kick that ball now, and what did you see, that sort of stuff. So that's the next phase, right? So what I think is happening more and more now is I think more and more of that type of coaching is coming in, particularly at club football underage, where you have an awful lot of strategies coming in. So you've got an awful lot of solution-based coaching, as I call it, where they're trying to work out scenarios like pencil formation, full forward line, creating space left and right of that, width in your wingers, that sort of thing, 10 and 12. Like I really think now that it's not so much defensive football now, but it's a defensive middle third. So if you can imagine that middle third now, that at any times could have up to 18 players in it, and that's where the game is won now. So I think it's kind of transferred from everyone behind the ball to around the middle third is where the action is. And again, if you lucky enough to have ball winners that you can put out of that up front, you have a great chance of kind of flooding that area, then getting the ball in and flooding it, like a little things like that. So I think more strategies and solution-based coaching is coming. And I do think too that more and more coaches are playing the hand or dealt with. And what I mean is they're not copying and pasting someone's setup. They're adapting to what the players they have. You might say that's obvious, but it's not obvious, because a lot of teams turn around and say, if they're training at 7 in the morning, we're training at 7 in the morning. This, that, and the other, where more and more people are looking at and saying, you know what, we have a strength here and we have a strength there. Why not try to manipulate this system and that system to that? So I think an awful lot of coaching now is transferable. I think you will see a lot of people that are coaching different codes mixing around. You might get a rugby coach or a soccer coach coming in and being able to bring in certain ideas and systems from him to there. And because Gaelic players now want that, I think they're more adaptable to that and they're more open-minded to being coached.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny whenever you're saying about the underage there and the formations and that. I had a fella said to me, he was with the senior setup there a couple of years ago, and he says, "Oh, I just went back down to the under 15s, just to relax." He says, I was talking to the fella coach, and he just says, "Oh, well, just going to be good just to enjoy the game again." And the next thing you know, he says there was moves, switches, everything that I got there. There was 2 sweepers, there's 1 sweeper.
Yeah.
He says my head was wrecked, and this is under
Yeah.
15s. You know what I mean? So it's even coming in, like as you said,
Without doubt.
like it's amazing. Like even at that under 15s, under 13 level, like that's the level that it's going to now. And I suppose, do you feel a bit of pressure too, Colm? And have you seen pressure on coaches to be trying to come up with this new fad, trying to change their drills all the time and activities all the time and their games all the time?
Mm.
Like I had a one coach, and we called him he called him 3 drill, because he only did the 3 drill the 3 drills for the whole
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, how do you feel about that?
Look, an awful lot of coaches aren't brave enough to do repetition. Like repetition is massive in learning,
Yeah.
right? So that's how it sticks, right? Repetition, repetition, repetition. But what a lot of people, what people make mistakes is you could be repeating the wrong thing all the time, right? So I like to I do a lot of repetition, but I do it differently, if you understand me. So for instance, if you're shooting, you could have 10 different shooting exercises, right? But you're still shooting, right? And it's how you get like the pressure on the shooter and stuff like that, right? Same way with if you're working on certain tactics. Like again, I think it's gone like this, right? I think with the National Football League is brilliant. If you've 2 weeks between the games, it's really good. So you should probably reflect on what you did well in the last match. And I think in training, this is only my opinion, you reinforce what you did well. So if there's certain elements of your game that you played and that you did well, you reinforce that by training them the next day. Then you have to do some prep on what you might be facing the next day. If there's anything that's sticking out, like for instance, if they have a big, strong full forward, it's obvious that you need to do some work on that sort of stuff. And I think players want that now. So that's their kind of, you're getting all your stuff, you're getting your video links, you're getting all your data and your information on the players. So to do it in some sort of game fashion, players want that now. And even if it's only a little bit, John, it just prepares the players of what might happen, and again, I think by preparing them for what might happen, you're actually preparing them if something else happens as well. Do you know what I mean? If you understand me, like you're trying to get them to say, right, you're not going to go out here and just play a game of football. You're going to go out here and you're going to expect that they might throw a long man, a big man in the corner. They might run the ball. They might do this, but you've got to spot that in real time and come up with a solution for it.
Yeah.
So that's the way I like to do it. Moving from match to match, and again, even like preparing for teams for championship. If a team is ultra defensive, right, you have to overload a team. And I've sometimes played 17 players and on the opposition and try to break it down and things like that, and just really overemphasize what you may face in this game. And sometimes I'm standing there, right, with a ball in my hand, and the team is trying to break that team. I just blow the whistle, give it to the opposition, and say, right, you break. So the attacking team now has to set up defense for a counter, little things like that, and that's just keeping them on their toes and getting them to expect the unexpected. So I think that's the way I would kind of structure it when I call it in-season training. Always reinforce what you did well. Okay, again, I'm a big believer in the positives, but not positive for the sake of being positive.
Yeah.
Keep reinforce, especially if you have a game plan and it's gone quite well. Reinforce it in the training. Okay, there's always a few areas that you weren't happy with. You can touch them down, and then you have to prepare for what you might face.
Brilliant, Colm. I could talk to you all night. I'm sorry for keeping you.
No problem.
You work in the morning, but
Yeah.
it's just amazing to hear your thoughts and to see where Gaelic coaching is going. It's fantastic, and it's in its infancy, as I said. I believe it's just only going to be getting far more professional, not in monetary terms, but just in the setup as well.
Without doubt, yeah.
It's fantastic. Like, and just on the upcoming championship, Dublin now are it's theirs to lose. Everyone's sick of Dublin. Sorry to say it, winning it all the time now. Who is going to, apart from me, who's going to challenge them, and how are they going to challenge them? How do you beat this Dublin team?
Well, I think a couple of things too. I have no doubt that they're the best and they're there to lose, and I enjoy watching them all the time. And I don't really mind if they win or don't win. What I mind is I don't enjoy when they steamroll everybody. We kind of feel a little bit that wasn't a good championship. But any championship that they've been challenged, like when Mayo were challenged them in Kerry last year, has been tremendous and very, very enjoyable. I think Kerry will challenge them. I think Mayo will challenge them, and I think Donegal will challenge them. I think when the sort of Super 8s and the new kind of sort of rules were brought in a couple of years ago, you had to beat Dublin twice to win the All Ireland, which is very, very difficult. Now you've only to beat them once. And I think that'll give all these teams a shot in the arm. Like I think Donegal, a tremendous team, improving all the time. Kerry got their tactics so right last year in the first match. For without a bit of luck, they could have snatched it that day. Mayo, I felt myself with Mayo now. Again, I'm a big fan of Mayo, and I felt that when James Horan came back in, they had decided they're rebuilding for a couple of years. And they always had a plan. Like I watched them even against us this year. They were blooding new players. They were trying things here, and they were quite content to take a hit along the way. And I don't know if it was just a coincidence or not, but like some of them players really stood up last week against Galway. So you can see the game time they're getting and things like that. Like these lads have invested in them, and they're giving them the confidence. So they could come again. And so I think they're the three leading lights there. And Tyrone will be close as well. He looked fabulous the other day, so I think they'll be. But I think the biggest thing, John, is that they know they need to beat them once, and they could do that.
Yeah, it's anyone's, but it's going to be fascinating. I can't wait for it. And it's uncertain times that we're living in, and it's brilliant that we are getting the sports. So it's fantastic. I just can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. Really,
not at all. Enjoyed it.
Hopefully we'll get you on again whenever Meath win the championship, and if we get, and we'll see how you are, and best of luck in the upcoming weeks.
Lovely. Thanks very much, John.
Cheers, Colm. Thank you.
Right, take it easy.